truth needs a hero. We are the Spy-Fi guys, and this is Clear and Present Danger. Welcome to the Spy-Fi guys, where we cover spy facts, spy fiction, and everything in between. I'm Christian.
And I'm Zach.
And welcome to our 50th episode. Wow. Can you believe it's been 50 episodes?
It's felt like 50 episodes. I didn't think we were going to make it this far. I'm not going to lie.
Now, this is 50, not including our Microdot episodes, right?
Yeah, and not including special bonus episodes like the 13 days and maybe some other ones. So,
For our 50th episode, we're covering Clear and Present Danger. And to cover another Jack Ryan, Tom Clancy movie, we brought back our Tom Clancy fanboy, Lance.
Guys, and congratulations on the 50th episode.
Thanks.
That's fantastic.
We're covering the second Harrison Ford Jack Ryan movie.
I will tell you that I remember bits and pieces of it, probably from having seen parts of it on TNT or USA or TBS or one of those networks.
One of those dad movie networks.
That's right. And this is a throwback to a time kind of like the old Star Trek movies when your hero could be over 45.
Hey, Tom Cruise is pushing 60-something now, and he's still a hero.
Tom Cruise is an exception.
Keanu Reeves?
That's true.
I'll just throw out there that I'm 50, so...
well, Lance, you're the fanboy. This is like a movie made for you.
Exactly.
You're also a dad, just like Jack Ryan is.
Exactly, except I don't watch the USA Network, though. I'm sorry. I gotta be different.
I mean, does anyone really watch any of those?
I just want to stick up for USA for a second because it had Burn Notice, which as Spy-Fi fans,
you
like that.
No. And also, what is the other? They had another spy show on there, Covert
Affairs.
I enjoyed.
Affairs.
So, actually, Lance, I know that the timeline is wonky in terms of the books versus movies. When was this supposed to take place?
Like when we were talking about Patriot Games, how that was actually in the Tom Clancy book timeline, that was supposed to take place before Red October.
Mm-hmm.
This one would actually follow Red October.
Okay.
There's actually another book in between it that they never made into a movie called Cardinal of the Kremlin.
Yes.
So timeline-wise, we're probably in the middle.
This is the last Harrison Ford Jack Ryan movie, right?
Sad. I mean, because I know that in the Clancy verse, he becomes president. So in my own personal headcanon, Air Force One is a sequel to this.
Yeah, I've heard that before. That Air Force One is like a spiritual successor to the Jack Ryan movies. Yeah. All right, this movie's really long, and there's a lot to talk about. So let's get started here.
All right.
Here's the IMDb plot summary, as always. CIA analyst Jack Ryan is drawn into an illegal war fought by the U.S. government against a Colombian drug cartel.
Pretty succinct. Although there's so much more that we will and can and will go into.
I know, twists and turns and curves and twists again.
So we start off with the titles against the title of the movie against the American flag background, and then transitions to being a flag on a boat. It's a Coast Guard ship.
Because it wouldn't be a Tom Clancy book / movie without
ships.
Without ships, yeah.
Yeah, definitely in the Navy, unless it's a submarine, it's a ship. Mm-hmm. Submarines are considered boats, but in the civilian world, they refer to them as boats.
Interesting. The Coast Guard has contact with another boat. And the people on the boat are speaking Spanish. They're saying put up the flag. Coast Guard approaches in a dinghy board the boat, and they pull the classic Star Trek thing of "You better come over here and see this."
I was about to say that the line is actually quote "It's a bad one," which I thought was kind of a cool line.
Uh-huh.
But this whole opening is like Star Trek, right? It's like if it were a Klingon ship and everyone's dead inside. It's like, whoa, yeah.
Which my favorite part of that whole thing was when they try to throw the Panamanian flag, I think it was.
Is that what they do? I didn't catch which flag that they were trying to throw up.
Because they seriously thought, even though we've got clearly United States markings on this ship, that if we throw this Panamanian flag, somehow that will make everything okay. And it really, really wasn't.
So we next go to CIA headquarters. Jack Ryan, this is our first shot of him. He's entering Greer's office. Greer played by James Earl Jones again.
And this guy is totally the Obi-Wan Kenobi in this movie. Because he's like, I need you to take over for me. And then he dies later.
Spoiler alert for later.
Go be the hero, yeah.
You're the chosen one.
I mean, that's basically what he says, yeah. He's like, I don't trust anybody else to do this.
At this point, he's just asking, how high is the pile on your desk?
Okay.
And he asks him to start investigating in this hardened stuff. And he says, be discreet. He's like, what do you mean? He's like, you'll find out. He's like, oh, come on. Throw the guy a bone here. Warn him if there's something going on that you should be careful about.
That's all the fun of it, especially in the intel community. It's like, are you busy the next couple months? Oh, why? You'll find out.
It's never good news, I guess.
Yeah. Well, anytime you say you'll find out, be worried.
Yeah, and the look that Jack has on his face when Greer tells them that is absolutely priceless, because he knows, like, damn it.
We see Jack driving into a checkpoint, and he's like, oh, you know where to go? I was like, yeah. Oh, where do I park? And he pans over, and it's the White House.
Where do you park at the White House? Great
I don't know, just over there. That's what the guard said.
Jack
is briefing the president, and there's a few other people there, and there was blood matching Hardin, his family, and his crew. They were all killed and thrown overboard. And these men have suspected ties to the cartels, the Kali cartel, not the Medellin. The Medellin, who we covered in, what was that?
American Made?
Yes.
I was waiting for him to fly by while this movie was happening.
Yeah. And then we notice one of the other guys there is very familiar to me. And Zach, you might remember him. Kittredge from Mission Impossible.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that was Robert Ritter, right?
Yeah.
That was the actor?
Yeah. Another headcanon. All right. In my mind, this is basically a prequel. Like, I looked at when they were made. So this is 2 years before Mission Impossible. Well, he plays pretty much the same role. That sort of slimy CIA agent who's, like, trying to cover up stuff.
That actor is great at playing a total douche. He really is.
Yeah. He's isn't he in some show, or he was at least a few like a year or two ago, playing like this very similar role.
We love to hate him.
Yeah.
So basically, they're like, this Hardin guy who was a friend of the president, he got murdered. The president's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that he was in bed with the cartels. But then he kind of comes around to it.
Greer starts coughing, like a loud cough.
Oh, yeah, and movies, nobody ever just has a cough. Nope. If you cough in a movie, you're dead.
The president, after the meeting, talks with his NSA or his national security advisor. NSA, I thought he was the head of NSA, but that's different. The national security advisor is a different position. Whose name is Cutter, and he's talking about the drugs, and he's upset, and he wants to take action, but he can't take action. And next we go to the estate of Ernesto Escobedo. I keep wanting to say Escobar.
It's because he obviously is Escobar, yeah.
Oh, it totally is.
He even looks
totally
like
him.
Yeah. This is located in Cali, Colombia, and this man named Cortez. I was wondering if this was trying to be a callback to Red October. They don't do it as nicely. They start talking in Spanish, and then they just transition to English.
Oh, it wasn't clear at all.
It wasn't as well done as, like, you zoom in on that one word that's the same in both languages, and the transition over, they're just speaking English the rest of the time now.
No, I don't think so.
It was very dramatic because you had the political officer, and he's actually reading a quote from the Bible.
Yeah, and the word was like Armageddon, was it? The transition was on? Something like that.
Yeah, he was talking a passage from Revelations.
Yep.
It's saying that they're doing it in Russian, but like you said, they zoomed in very melodramatically on his mouth, and then at a certain key point, he starts speaking English, and it backs away from him.
So here they just are speaking Spanish, and then they just suddenly transition to English.
Yeah.
And they don't speak Spanish a lot the rest of the movie. That's mostly just in English.
Right.
So they were discussing here that someone talked, and the money is still out there, basically.
I think Escobedo says, I killed a thief.
Oh, yes. That's right.
So he had his men kill the thief. So it was planned. I don't know how they got caught by the Coast Guard. That was kind of dumb or whatever. Yeah. But anyway, Cortez doesn't seem that important in this scene. Obviously, he becomes more important later. Did he remind you of the bad guy from License to Kill? And I'm not saying that because they're both Hispanic and drug buyers.
Who are we talking about? Cortez or Escobedo?
Cortez.
Oh, definitely Cortez. I can see it.
Thank you, Lance.
Okay. You know what he is in? He's in one of the Fast and Furious movies.
It always comes back to Fast and Furious.
Yeah, he's the villain in Fast 5, which is basically the same role here. So my mind went immediately to that, not to licensed kill, which is funny for me not thinking about James Bond first.
To your point, Zach, when you were talking about the Coast Guard intercept, that can actually see that being a real thing, especially if it's some rich, powerful corporate magnate or whatever. Basically, you're a rich guy.
Yeah.
The family's been murdered and whatnot. And they usually, when they go out for port, they also will give an estimated time of return. And if they've busted that suspense by a reasonable amount, someone's going to call and be like, "Hey, we can't find this boat. It could be adrift. Something could be wrong." So I could see the Coast Guard going out and looking for it. And when they find the boat still underway, that may raise some eyebrows.
Yeah.
So the usual rich people get priority. Gotcha.
Yeah, to be honest with you.
Okay, so the next part is we're at the Ryan house.
Which is a completely different house.
Okay.
Because they were here they're like in a neighborhood. Last time they were like in the middle of the woods in Annapolis. Also, I guess their last house got like shot to hell, didn't it?
Pretty much.
Okay, it makes sense that they're actually moved.
Yeah, and if I'm them, do you really want to live in a house where you've had a bunch of terrorists get killed?
Yeah. So we see Jack Jr. first, really, and I guess that solves the cliffhanger of last movie, if you remember.
Totally
we didn't
does.
find out whether it was a girl or a boy. Here it's a boy, and he's like a toddler, maybe. Like
I was guessing 3.
How old do you think this kid is? Yeah, I was like 3 years old or so.
What? No.
Yeah, but Sally hasn't really aged a day.
True.
I thought Sally got younger.
That is the same actress as Sally, right?
Yeah, Thora Birch.
Okay, that's like she looked the same, but it's like she did look younger weirdly. I don't know how.
Maybe she just acted younger. Also, Thora Birch is in the Dungeons and Dragons movie as the God Empress, if I recall correctly. Anyway.
Okay. I like that Jack Jr. is playing with a submarine toy. It's like, this boat won't float.
It's not supposed to float.
Yeah.
Nice, real subtle throwback to reference to Hunt for Red October, I thought.
Yeah, definitely.
I giggled.
Mm-hmm.
And we go to Greer in the hospital, and we find out that he's got pancreatic cancer.
Right.
And so he needs Jack in his office doing his job.
He says, "Have you ever been to the White House?" And Jack says, "Once. I hated it." Was that a reference to a past movie?
Or just now?
See, that's what I was wondering. Thank you.
I think it could be, again, depending on how much they're keeping the Hunt for Red October in. When he first went to go brief the National Security Advisor there, I think that was at the White House.
Oh, that's right. When he does his he did it! Oh my God! Yeah, and everyone starts looking at him.
And he's like, "You son of a bitch!" and slams on the desk.
Yeah,
I was like, "You've got something to add, Dr. Ryan?"
Okay, well, in that case, this line doesn't make any sense because why is he talking about once?
No, he says more than once. That's what
he says more than once.
Well, he says once, and then Greer says more than once, and you loved it.
Wow, apparently Greer remembers his life better than he does.
But yeah, so back at headquarters, Ryan is made acting deputy director of intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
And he'll be working with Ritter on the Hardin case. We find out that Ritter is the deputy director of operations.
Yeah, and Ritter is like, basically, we're not going to work with him. We're going to cut him out of this whole thing that we're planning. And even officially, the president doesn't know what they're about to do.
Yeah.
It isn't all that shocking because you have a lot of times where people on the operations side don't want to include the intel side.
Yeah.
Because
they think they're better than we are.
Sorry, how are they supposed to do anything without intelligence, though?
That's our point.
Okay.
But they, like I said, they think they're better than everybody. My personal opinion.
That's a hot take.
Going back to that meeting with Ritter and Cutter, yeah. So Ritter wants a copy of the authorization of the action against the cartels, and he wants that written authorization to cover his ass.
Which is so smart.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was genius on his part.
So he starts his operation, which he's named Operation Reciprocity. Ritter goes down to Colombia, recruits John Clark, who is... Well, we don't know much about John Clark here, actually.
Not here, but he's Rainbow Six. So where's my Rainbow Six movie, Amazon?
I assume coming after, as if the Without Remorse movie does very well, we will get that. And considering that the Without Remorse movie is starring Michael B. Jordan, it'll probably do really well.
So yeah, Clark is like, I am in, you just pay me he seems like totally on
it's not.
board.
He's not on board at first because he's like he realizes this is not congressionally approved, and he's like, I want my money in my account before we do anything. So he doesn't want to get screwed.
Yeah, we should also say that John Clark is played by Willem Dafoe.
Oh yes, we didn't really mention that. Yeah,
who has apparently never looked young in his entire life.
I'll tell you this much though: out of the different actors, obviously I haven't seen Michael B. Jordan yet.
Yeah,
but I think like Liev Schreiber also played Clark in the movie which shall not be named because I hate it so much. But William Dafoe, actually, to me, having read the books, in my mind, I could easily see William Dafoe being John Clark.
Interesting. Okay. All right.
Here's the thing, though. Obviously, Willem Dafoe is great, especially as the Green Goblin. But the thing about it is, with commandos and spies, you want someone who is very generic looking, right? And Willem Dafoe is very distinctive looking. You know what I mean?
But in a very grizzled, rough, tumbled, seen some shit kind of way.
He's not like your classic Hollywood leading man kind of thing. So he's
not Tom Cruise.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it works for me, but it's just kind of funny that you'd recognize Willem Dafoe anywhere. It's hard to miss.
So next we go to Cortez, who's going through Dulles International Airport. Greeted by this woman whose name is Moira. They have this big hug. And then we next go to Kathy, who's in a restaurant with, I was like, is Jack one of those other people? But it doesn't look like it. So she's just with like her colleagues at dinner. And she sees Moira, who's also in the restaurant, and like waves. Kathy comes over to talk to Moira before she could get a glimpse of Cortez, whose name is, what does he say his covers here?
Roberto Landa.
Landa, thank you.
It always makes me think of Lando.
The tractor salesman.
Yes. Yeah. There's a part where she describes him as the Latin Jack Ryan.
Yes.
He seems in better shape than Jack Ryan.
Oh, ouch.
And taller. But it's just the truth. Speaking of hot takes, that's another one.
I feel like in his current age right now, Harrison Ford could probably still kick your ass.
That's true, but that's not saying much.
Cortez leaves, the restaurant before Kathy could really get a good look at him. So only sees like the back of his head.
Mm-hmm.
But we find out that Moira actually works for the FBI. She's like a secretary there.
Yeah, and she's at a briefing where they all figure it out. They figure out the whole Hardin connection.
Yeah. We go to, speaking of Mission Impossible flashbacks, a floppy disk.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, God, yeah.
So we have the tech here. His name is Petey. Jack needs him to break into the disk. And then he gets it like 2 minutes later. And it was apparently like the wife's birth month, the daughter's birthday, and the son's birth year.
Yep.
Yes, he easily hacks in.
Yeah. There's a ledger there. It's one of those Star Trek moments of like, well, actually not even Star Trek. It's like this director did this a lot last time too, whereas like they uncover something and you don't find out what it is until the next scene.
Yeah, it keeps the audience engaged. We want to find out what's happening.
I feel like that was also I was saying that was also for last week when we were covering Fair Game. They did that a lot as well.
Yeah, this movie reminded me of Fair Game a lot, actually.
Which is actually interesting that it's like that parallel. Like it was unintentional where we placed these films, and I'll get to at the very end. We'll get to like what I saw like very interesting parallels.
Mm-hmm.
When we're talking about the passcodes and everything, like if you think back to when the movie was made, which I think was like what 94-ish or so.
94, yeah.
Yeah, cybersecurity wasn't a real big thing back then yet.
Yeah. I mean, FBI didn't have their like cyber security branch until what 2002 or so.
Something
whenever
like
breach
that.
takes place, breach takes place.
I think it's 2002 if I remember.
Outrageous! I have the same code on my luggage.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah. What idiot would leave his code at that?
Here's where we go to FBI headquarters, which nice shot of the outside. I do like that building actually.
Really? You're like the only one in the city who does.
I know. Well, I think it's a cool looking building. Jack is briefing a task force. He says that Hardin had some really shady dealings, including like being partners with the drug cartels. He was laundering money for them. And also at some point in this, it transitions to a meeting into the Oval Office, which I thought was a cool transition.
Oh, I don't think I realized that.
Yeah, because at one point he's just doing the task force, and then he's briefing the president. And like they just transition it pretty seamlessly.
Yeah, and then this is the part where he gives some free political advice to the president about how to spin the story, and then the president takes his advice later.
Jack tells the president, all right, don't deny the relationship. So next we go to a outdoor firing range. Also, guess who was here? Agent Coulson.
I did not see Agent Coulson.
Yeah, he's the one who was like on the far left of the screen, like with the people who were like looking for the sniper.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this is probably one of his earliest roles.
He was also a soldier in We Were Soldiers with Mel Gibson. Yeah.
And I think he also plays like an intelligence officer or something in the West Wing at some point. So, again, headcanon. This is all the same character.
Nice. So basically what's going on in this scene is there's a sniper who's shooting at a target and they can't find him and they keep trying to find him and they can't get him.
They at one point think they found him, but nope, they just found his lunch, his McDonald's wrapper.
Yes, blatant product placement there. Thanks a lot, movie.
Yeah, I think what was going on there was probably either at sniper school or a training exercise. It could possibly be, that they were trying to put different soldiers in different things because Clark is already there.
Right, yeah.
So it's like he's trying to like pick his team and is having like different probably snipers go out and do those different exercises.
Right.
And
Makes
this
sense.
is where we meet who is very important throughout the books from this point on, Domingo Chavez.
Yeah. Wait, he's important for books other than Rainbow Six?
Yes. Oh, he's extremely important.
It must have been after I stopped reading the books. But of course, he's like the main character of Rainbow Six, basically. And also, there is Benjamin Bratt.
Yep.
Who has been in lots of stuff, but I think I've seen him most recently in Catwoman.
How did I know you were going to say Catwoman?
I haven't seen that many movies with him in it.
Doctor Strange?
Okay. Moving on a little bit, Ding Chavez is on board. He's so cool. He's so great. President takes Jack's advice, and Jack says to his family, hey, the president's taking my advice. They're kind of like, whatever. They've got their own stuff going on. And then this is when Jack is at the hearing in front of Congress, and he promises no covert military action.
Yeah, there's one senator who's like pushing him hard on this. And he's like, I don't know what you mean. I already told you. Is that I want your word. And this is like a private intelligence committee meeting. It's not. There's no public. There's no press there.
No, they're probably going over discussing different classified things.
Yeah, so Jack says, like, yeah, I give my word. There's no troops, nothing. No boots on the ground.
And then immediately cuts to the troops being inserted
right
into the Colombian wilderness, which we always appreciate.
Yeah.
Which I guess he could technically say, well, when I said it at the time,
there were no troops. Yeah.
However, 15 minutes after I walked out the door, they happened to be there.
Yeah, and so Clark has the team in a helo, and he like takes away their dog tags or anything that could identify them.
Mm-hmm.
Which that whole thing kind of irked me a little bit.
Oh yeah,
it makes perfect sense, and that's something that they would do is take all the dog tags. That way, if one of them gets shot or captured, there's nothing there to identify them. They just have plain old school battle dress uniforms on.
So what's the problem?
A couple things. The whole thing is they sent them down there, and obviously Clark is the only Caucasian. The rest are all.
That's right. They're all Spanish speaking.
They're all Spanish speaking. They all are Hispanic. And so on and so forth. But yet, when they're going through the jungle and whatnot, they all have M16s. They're all speaking English,
right.
Which that would not be the case. From the moment they landed, they would all be speaking Spanish.
To be fair, though, I'm sure that's just a movie thing where, yes, that would have been the case, but they didn't want to have it subtitled. Like, they don't even have the drug dealer speaking Spanish, so...
I can see that. But the American weapons part, that bugs me.
That's fair, all right.
They were trying to make it look like other cartels were fighting one another. Most likely they would have AK-47s and so on and so forth.
Well, and your problem with that comes up.
It does.
I do want to comment on the way that they dropped them off. I thought that was really cool. Like the chopper is just like doesn't ever actually land, goes like a foot over the ground, and they all just jump out and get out pretty quick, and the choppers go out pretty quickly.
That's always pretty cool to watch.
Yeah. And so we also get Ritter, who gets a page. Remember those pagers?
Uh-huh.
Uh-huh.
And so he logs on his computer, basically sends an instant message to Cutter and says that they're in.
Mm-hmm.
Which the way he did that, the whole thing is supposed to be, this whole secret thing, like maybe 5 people know about it.
Right.
But he sends this message. I mean, granted, it's probably on a secure server.
One would hope.
That. I would hope.
Trail.
But yeah, he's in the congratulations, you have your own little war.
Yeah, that I forgot that was
Why
that
would
was
you
a lie.
ever
Why?
say that?
Because it's
you
a
just
movie.
Say that's all you say. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like it's on. Done. He knows what
Done.
you're talking about.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Next, go to Jack, who's driving into the White House, and
he knows where to park.
yeah.
Well, I would hope so. The purpose of this meeting is they want to get Hardin's money, $650 million. But I guess they still don't have
change.
proof that he worked with the cartels, which I was like, I thought they just established that he did.
Well,
I don't really get that.
He had if you recall what Jack says, it's a suspected ties.
Right.
The killers had suspected ties.
Yes, I understand that, but it's like, okay, we get that Hardin is part of the cartel. The movie is moving on to other things. I am no longer interested in this Hardin stuff. Why are we still talking about it?
Because they need a reason for Jack to be down there.
Right.
Jack says it was a theory. It's not. We need to establish real proof. And and the president basically says, "Well, go get proof." He walked right into that one.
Which is kind of funny because isn't later Greer's like, yeah, you walked right into that.
The very next scene.
And that's the big takeaway from that scene is that Jack has been elevated to a huge position now. He may have worked with Greer, may have been his deputy or whatever. But he's in the major leagues now.
Yeah.
And
he's kind of out of his league.
Oh, it painfully out of his league. And everyone there knows it. And I think in certain reflection that both Cutter and Ritter know he's naive and are trying to take advantage of that.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the last movie, it seemed like Jack was only going back into the CIA to find
Sean.
Of course, it's Sean. So we're led to assume that he stayed in all that time after that, however many years later. This is at least 2 or 3 years later.
Which kind of makes sense.
I don't know if it does.
Because it's something that, especially if you've read the books or, if you've been part of the intel community, it sucks you back in.
It's like the mafia.
It more or less, yeah. I mean, that is one way to look at it. So, I mean, especially, he's done all these different things. He's obviously with the CIA with Hunt for Red October. He's worked with the CIA now with Patriot Games.
Yeah, he's got the taste for action.
He's got the taste for action, but he's also been established. And so he's not going to just be, random intel analyst sitting in some cubby hole on the third floor at Langley.
But he's not usually going to be giving briefing to the presidents either.
No.
Yeah, but now he is, and now he's in the big league. Greer tells him about Clark, who's down in Colombia, and says that if you hit a brick wall, reach out to him.
Yep. In the next scene, the commandos blow up a plane and a hangar, which apparently was left unguarded because the soldier just runs in, plants the bomb, it runs out again, and then detonates it.
Yep.
Which I could see because these guys, especially that we're working for the cartels, I mean, they're not necessarily your most operational security savvy. They're most likely just paid guys like, here, you guys stand here and watch this. Yeah. And also, they're not really expecting any trouble.
They've got the government pretty much in their pocket, right?
Yeah, and Escobedo, I mean, he's one of the main cartel guys. So who's going to screw with them?
Yeah, that's fair.
And plus, if they're special forces, they're really good at being sneaky.
One would hope so. He's going on a trip down to Colombia, and they're telling him, you don't roll down the windows. Everything's bulletproof. You don't want to get shot at. And they're showing him photos of Escobedo's crew, but they say that they don't know who his intel officer is.
And they illustrate it with a picture of the Invisible Man from the old movies, from the movie from the 30s, which I appreciated.
Definitely appreciated the humor and the sarcasm in using that picture.
Escobedo's talking to Cortez. He says that someone's been talking, and he's like, all right, find out.
Who killed my plane? Get off my plane. That was the other one.
So next, Jack talks to Clark and tells him that he thinks Hardin was connected to the cartels, but doesn't have proof. And so, who told you I could help you? And he's like, well, Greer did. And how is he doing? He's like, not well.
We get to see a little bit of humanity from John Clark, who's usually Mr. Tough Guy, about Greer. He's like, he's a good man. I'm sorry to hear that. Something along those lines.
But yeah, so Jack uses that lead, and he follows up on it, calls the president, tells him that Hardin was connected with Escobedo. Like most cartels, they also have a legitimate front. And Hardin was doing business with a front, which was Lindo Coffee, which of itself doesn't mean anything. But the fact that he was paying $6,200 a pound for coffee means something.
It's suspicious, yeah. So then there's another problem now, and I really did not like this part. So let's argue about it. So he's like, okay, this $650 million is going to get seized, but the Colombians want it, and we want it too. And I'm like, why is this Jack Ryan's problem?
Because it's the president's problem, and now Jack has to deal with it.
Right.
It's bureaucracy.
I can see your point, Zach, but like I said, they were sending Ryan down there to be the representative of the White House, more or less. That's also when Jack says, hey, that's not my thing. Which
Right.
is
I don't even know where to start with that. Yeah.
Yeah, which leads into them sending down the FBI director.
Yeah, Jacobs.
But I'm like, wouldn't this be like a State Department thing if it's diplomacy? Yeah, whatever.
Probably not, because
law enforcement.
Yeah, it's more law enforcement. I'm sure State Department would get involved eventually if this was, more real life.
Real.
I was just wondering.
Yeah, because remember, a lot of FBI agents are accountants.
FBI Director Jacob knows someone there, and he's going to come down and handle the negotiations. Our special ops team going through the jungle, they find the trap door, drop the bomb down it, blow up the whole thing. There's like a whole operation underneath.
Yeah, this movie probably has more explosions than most of our Spy Fi Guys movies put together, right? There's like one explosion in Patriots game. We have a lot of shooting. We don't have a lot of explosions. Maybe since
Mission Impossible has one.
Well, there's that one with the train.
Two.
There's a train, and then there's also the car in the beginning. We're forgetting. We've covered Bond films. License to Kill had so many explosions.
Yeah, Dr. No had the one.
Yeah, but License to Kill has like all of the tanks exploding.
It was almost a Michael Bay movie at that point.
That's fair.
Pretty much.
We're men. We like explosions, so.
That's right.
But we don't look at explosions because we're cool. Escobedo comes to survey the damage, and as he's doing this, Cortez is also there, and he finds the bullet and very quietly pockets it. I think, Lance, you mentioned that earlier.
Mm-hmm.
He looks at it, and you can't really see it that well, but it looked like a shell casing from a 5.56 millimeter round, which is what M16s use.
Right.
Well, it's not exactly a smoking gun, no pun intended. But of course, our cartels, they're not a law enforcement agency. They don't need to prove their suspicions.
Well,
no.
Kind of does.
But Cortez, being the intel analyst that he is,
he will investigate it later. And we'll get to that when we do.
He's going to try to find something to use to his advantage.
Oh, yeah. He's the man. He's so great. What a great villain. Way better than Sean Miller.
Go to Jacobs at FBI. He's talking to his secretary, Moira, and he tells her to call in the next few days, basically. She calls Londa, and you can't see it because this is a video. This is an audio medium, but I'm putting finger quotes up. Londa, a.k.a. Cortez.
Right.
And I like this bit. She calls the number, and it's this woman answers. It has like a suitcase recording thing, which activates different sounds, like a warehouse sound,
factory sound. It has like ambient sounds.
She asks if he's free the next couple of days. It says that her boss is leaving the country, which of course tips him off because he knows that her boss is the FBI director. So if he's going out of the country, something's going on.
Yeah, I think what he later sees on the news about the president is sending Jacobs and his team down, and then so he pieces that together with what his contact, his source, as it would be, which is a classic case of kind of like the Russians would refer to her as a reverse honeypot.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
A reverse honeypot?
He's doing a honeypot on her.
Yeah, I thought that was just a honeypot.
A honeypot men have a different term, but I don't remember what it is.
Yeah, honeypot is typically the female agent seducing a male suspect, whereas reverse honeypot would be the male being the seducer.
We will research. Okay, so the president announces the seizure of the money, and Escobedo is like, someone will die for this.
Yep.
So overdramatic.
And Londo plans the attack on...
You mean Cortez?
Yes, that is what I meant. And this is one of the parts that I actually remembered from this movie, is this upcoming attack.
Yeah, so they're planning a hit, and he's going through different streets. Oh, this is not a good street. This is where you want to hit. But he says, I won't be there because I have some business to take care of in Washington.
Right, which is revealed to be meeting up with Moira at a love nest.
Well, he also... But key point here is that he calls her, and back in the days of answering machines, you could screen your call.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you hear like someone you want to talk to, you pick up on the answering machine, you pick up the phone.
Yeah, pre-caller ID days.
Yeah.
So at this point, I was like, okay, this is going to be an exciting moment. This is probably the climax of the movie, right? And I paused it. 1.5 hours left.
Yep.
Feels
This
like
is a long movie. Yeah, so FBI Director Jacobs lands in Colombia, but as they're going through their motorcade, we see a bunch of people watching them on rooftops.
Yeah.
Moira and Cortez meeting up at a cabin in the woods. They start to make out, and as they're making out, he kills Moira, which I did not expect. I didn't see that coming.
I totally did.
You did? Wow.
Oh, I absolutely did. Here's the thing, though, and not to start on a whole book versus movie conversation.
Yep.
He does not kill her in the book.
Oh, interesting. All right.
Not at all. In fact, I don't even think he even flies up to Washington.
Interesting.
In the book,
Mhm.
Moira eventually figures out that she's the one that inadvertently gave the information and tries to kill herself.
Oh.
She does. She doesn't succeed at it. But yeah, she is in the book. She is not killed by Cortez.
Wow. Okay, that is a change. Interesting.
Oh, there's a lot of changes from the movie from the book.
And as they're driving, this bus comes out of nowhere and blocks them in, and they start launching bazookas at them at the SUVs.
RPGs.
This was really scary because like their armored SUVs were not only big targets, but they did nothing against the RPGs.
Yeah.
They're not designed to.
As this is going on, Ryan is still alive. Jacobs is alive for a while. They get blocked in by another bus coming at them. And, like, there's a lot of action here going on. But in the end, basically almost everyone else gets gunned down except for Jack and like a few agents.
Yeah, who's this Dan Murray guy? Is he from another movie?
I'm glad you brought that up.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay.
This is, I think, the first time in the movies where we actually meet Dan Murray.
Okay.
He and Jack are actually really good friends. Just like Moira doesn't get killed, Dan Murray dies in the ambush. Jack, when he finally calls Kathy and says, "No, honey, Dan Murray was killed." He absolutely was not killed. In fact, in the books, he eventually becomes the director of the FBI.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and actually has a huge role. I forget which book it is now. I think it might be Executive Orders.
Is that when he becomes president?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is this like a deleted scene kind of thing? It's like Biggs in Star Wars where there's like a scene with them establishing that they're friends and then that scene gets cut and then the scene of him being sad is kept in the movie, so it's confusing.
Maybe. I don't think so. They kind of like alluded to them being friends when they've had
I guess they like
the White House before.
Thing, yeah.
Yeah. They were talking about or Dan was referring to how Jack hates Mexican food.
Dan hates Mexican food, I thought.
I'm stealing all of my favorite lines, guys, before we even there. But
Sorry.
then also a couple observations here. There's a part where Jack's SUV gets hit by an RPG, but the whole thing doesn't explode because he survives. So that was interesting. And then also,
he has plot armor.
Yeah, and then also a lot of the guys on the ground shoot and kill guys on the roof, which to me feels like could only happen if it was a movie. Because in real life, no one would be dumb enough to like stand out on the edge where they could actually get hit. You know what I mean?
Are you talking about the bad guys or the good guys?
I'm talking about the bad guys who get killed while they're standing on the roof.
No, I can see it because these aren't professionals. They're just random people. They're just told to go out and just start shooting. They've got them pinned in, so they have to like lean over. Then they can't like get all gangsta and hold their AKs over the side of the building and just start spraying. And that's kind of what happened in Mogadishu with say Black Hawk Down. They were firing from all over the place, primarily from rooftops.
Yeah,
that's
fine.
The part that it did get me though was the opposite. Was the guys on the ground? I mean, they're standing in the middle of the street trying to fire back. I'm like, and it's only like 5-6 seconds later they go, we should probably seek cover. Well, you think?
Yep.
It's they probably would have died in like 2 seconds. You think?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that would have been, especially like the FBI guys in their protective detail. That would have been the first thing they would have done. They would have either hidden or trying to take positions behind the vehicle closest to the buildings. Gone in the alleyways, which they eventually did. One would have provided cover while others ran. Yeah, that was just... It irked me the same way they did when in Patriot Games when they busted Sean out of the police van.
Oh, right. I remember you being annoyed by all of that.
Just a little.
Yeah, a couple other observations here. There's a Zack Snyder slow-mo part. When one of the SUVs explodes and then Jack Ryan is like kind of crawling, running, walking away from it. Do you remember this? And then also he grabs a car and then does like a back turn into an alley. And I
like that. That was good.
But how did he know the alley was there, let alone like where it is? Because he's just
Jack Ryan. He's
amazing. Okay, fine.
He gets out of this all with his friend that he got.
No, that was Jacobs. that he was
that
pulling around.
Oh, I couldn't tell.
No.
It was hard to tell who was who there.
No,
okay.
Dan. Yeah. I think Dan died in the street.
Okay. Yeah, it was the slow-mo part.
He gets out of there with just Jacobs, but then by the time he gets out, Jacobs already dead.
This reminds me of in Munich, the part where they say we've established a dialogue now. We hit them and then they hit us.
But yeah, so next we go to a brief scene of housekeeping, knocking on the cabin in the woods, and it finds Moira dead.
Yeah, this doesn't make any sense to me. You'd think a cartel guy would know how to disappear somebody.
Yeah.
That's a very good point.
Whereas in contrast, he wanted them to find her. I don't get it.
He shouldn't.
No, he absolutely should not.
And so we have next the president walking his dogs with Cutter. Cutter's saying, I don't know how this got out, that, Jacobs was going there and how they could plan this. But we go to Cutter and Ritter talking, right near the Potomac. Cutter said that the president basically said that the gloves are off now.
Dialogue is going to escalate. So meanwhile, Cortez tries to blame a rival.
Yeah, for this hit.
Wait, that's not true. He's they're trying to make it look like you did it.
So Escobedo's at his kid's party, and Cortez is there. And Escobedo says that it was not him, no matter what everyone else is saying. And Cortez is telling him that it's a rival. Someone else is making it look like you hit them.
So you know what this reminded me of? Was
what?
Batman War Games. If you ever read
that
series.
Wow, that's a flashback, yeah.
Heck yeah. Lance, if you're not familiar, basically Batman, our brilliant hero, had this plan to get all the Gotham gangs to fight each other, and then one of his sidekicks executed the plan, turns a huge gang war that takes over the city.
Oh, nice. No, I wasn't familiar with that one.
So I'm if you're an American and you want to get rid of these drug cartels, aside from legalize it, that's just a personal opinion. Anyway, if you want to get rid of the cartels, have them kill each other. Why have your soldiers do it?
What's happening here is Escobedo calls members of the cartel and says, we need to meet tomorrow. This wasn't me. We need to find out who did this. Mm-hmm. And the call is being traced and recorded.
Yes.
But after the call is over, Cortez calls the other cartel guy he was talking to and says that Escobedo is scared. And this also is getting recorded.
Yeah, so I was wondering, how is Jack Ryan going to get involved back in this whole situation? But we get our answer is he wants to find out what happened to Moira.
And he also brings Kathy over to Moira's place where they're going through all of her stuff.
Rank has its privileges, I suppose.
Oh, it absolutely does.
So they also realize that Landa, Cortez, is probably connected. Although it's a little bit of profiling. He said because he's Latin, that's what makes it connected.
Yeah, he's Latin, from Latin America where they have drugs.
It's kind of profiling, but yes, in this case, that was correct.
Well, in this case, it's he's dating someone who just happened to die at the same day.
Okay, fair enough.
With FBI people, right?
Jack says they have no leads. Oh, I have plenty of leads, but nothing that actually gives us an idea of who this guy is. And in the background, there's a tech who's playing with the voicemail, and they realize that that's got to be his voice.
He says, "You have the voice of a killer on your answering machine," or something like that.
Mm-hmm. They match the voice of the recording
with
the call of the cartel that was.
And it's a good thing that he spoke English to his fellow cartel member, even if it doesn't make any sense.
I mean, even if he didn't, they could at least identify the voice match, and it's a 90% match.
But the thing is, it's okay, so one's connected to the other one, but it doesn't tell them who he is. At least not yet. And then next is an aircraft carrier, because it would not be a Tom Clancy story without an aircraft carrier in it.
Yeah, and there's what looks like is that an F-18 taking off?
Yeah, that was an F-18.
And then we see Clark watching with, I think this is Chavez, right?
Oh, yeah.
All the members of the cartels are arriving at a meeting, and the F-18 is overhead. And Chavez is painting a target with his laser target, which is a car.
Well, it's a monster truck.
Right, yeah.
I do remember the monster truck from watching it on TV.
I did not remember that, but the F-18 launches a missile, and everyone is there except for Escobedo.
Yeah, he wanted to get all the heads of the cartels. This is like Batman, too. He's I wanted to get the heads of all the cartels, but I missed one. Also, they discover that there are civilians in the house, which I think any reasonable person probably could have predicted.
Yeah.
Would be the case.
How did they not notice them before that point?
Yeah, I don't remember whether they tried to abort or not. I think they're it's too late to abort.
Yeah.
So screw it.
They probably, honestly, to be honest, they probably wouldn't have anyway.
Collateral damage, right?
It's a cold way to put it, but yes.
Also, the missile is CGI. I wanted to point that out. It's pretty clearly 90s CGI as it floats through the air. So that's interesting.
Everyone in the cartel besides Escobedo is killed.
Mm-hmm.
And we next go back to CIA, where they find a match for the voice, who's Felix Cortez, who used to be Cuban intelligence.
And then they try to pin the explosion at the house on a car bomb, but everyone does these different analyses, chemical analysis, yada, yada, yada. But eventually, basically, both Jack and the cartels figure out that it was actually an American bomb that did it.
Yeah. Ritter and Cutter meet, and like Cutter is watching this newscast on there and is like, wasn't expecting all this collateral damage. Like, look, and it's like, there's like, they're carrying the body of a kid out on ABC.
Mm-hmm.
And Ritter just doesn't care. He's like,
No,
what did you expect?
Yeah. You said the gloves were off. They're off.
Yeah, that's a good point, Ritter. What do you do when the person you hate the most has made a really good point?
Begrudgingly acknowledge it.
So having figured it out that they're both Americans, is it Cortez who faxes Cutter and says, let's meet?
Yes.
Well, he says he knows that there are American troops illegally operating in Colombia.
Someone eavesdrops on their meeting. I don't remember who.
DEA.
Yeah.
Basically, Cutter's like, I want this whole thing to go away.
Cortez says that, if you just take out Escobedo, or if someone takes out Escobedo, I can restructure the drug trade. I can diminish the supply that goes to the U.S. in return. But that'll be a win for you. But a win for me is going to be if I can defeat these American soldiers who are here.
Yeah, so he's like going to sell out the soldiers.
No, which one thing to point out from the book, that one of the president's big things was the war on drugs.
Mm-hmm.
And so being able to use that, hey, we'll not just reduce the amount of drug trade, but I'll give you the intel so you can make these huge drug busts.
Right.
That gives you the political capital you need to do what most politicians want to do. And I think they even pointed out in the movie when Ritter says, "What do all first-term politicians want? A second term."
Yo, stop taking all my favorite quotes. Here's a way to win the war on drugs, which is legalize it. Okay, sorry.
Now we go back to Jack and Greer, and Greer's in the hospital, like in a hospital bed. He's not looking good.
Yeah.
But Jack shows him like the surveillance photos of Cutter and Cortez meeting. He says, "I'll have the audio soon," but he doesn't have it yet.
Mm-hmm.
And Jack comes to the idea or realization that if he keeps digging, he doesn't think anyone's going to like what he finds. And Greer reminds him of his oath to the American people that he took.
It's like the Obi-Wan Kenobi speech. The Force will be with you always.
Brief scene with Cutter meeting with the president. And Cutter suggests to the president at the time that the whole thing just sort of went away.
Get the president to agree.
You notice he doesn't give the president any details as to why he's suddenly come up with this. He's like, this has been going on long enough. We've done what we've wanted to do. The longer this goes on, the more likely, something of this could be found out. Let's just make it go away.
Oh my goodness. You mean like you can't win a war against drug cartels just by killing a lot of them? Because more people will come over and take their same job. That's why you have to legalize it. Okay.
Who knew?
Jack meets with Petey again, the hacker. He wants him to break into Ritter's computer. And realizes, all right, I'm going to have to, we're way beyond birthdays now. And he has to write down the special program.
Oh, he had a total nerdgasm at that point.
Oh, yeah.
You just look on his face.
And he looks over to his data tape storage unit, the storage tech at probably a 4000. If it looks very similar to the one I saw in the NSA museum.
It also looks similar to where they keep the Death Star plans in Rogue One.
I knew you were going to say that.
Oh, you know me so well.
Because, of course, that's what I thought of when I saw that data collection thing.
Oh, in fairness to Zach, if he didn't say it, I was going to.
There we go.
I got you back on this one, buddy.
So, Ritter enters his office, turns on his computer. Jack gets the access code from Petey and gets into his files and goes into the reciprocity files. But at this moment, Petey calls him and says, "Wait until he logs off before you get in." It's like, no, it's too late.
I thought that was funny. That sort of definitely seems like the kind of thing Petey would actually have done, is forget to tell him something pretty important.
So Jack is looking through all the files. Actually, I thought that Ritter was running an auto deletion program, but he was actually just manually deleting stuff.
Boomer. Am I right?
And so Jack, I like this. He calls up Ritter and is like, maybe we got off on the wrong foot. Do you play tennis? We should go out and play a game. He's just trying to distract him from seeing that he's logged into his computer and is reading all these files.
It's like a spy movie.
Yeah,
I like this, yeah.
But trying to be sneaky, he becomes obvious.
That's also true. Maybe he wouldn't have been thinking to look for someone on the network if Jack hadn't called him.
But Jack is trying to find at least one page he can print out. He's trying to print it out, but of course it's out of ink. Oh no, toner low.
This is ridiculous.
Or was it out of paper? One of
It
the
was
two.
out of paper. It was out of paper.
That's right.
And I also like that when he puts the paper in and like shoves it closed, like the drawer clearly is not closed, so the printer would not work.
But he does manage to get at least one printout.
Yeah, that one printout that's going to sink this whole administration.
Ritter comes knocking on his door, and he does the classic Harrison Ford finger point.
I loved it.
You're going to
You broke the law.
You did the right and wrong.
Because he's Ritter, he has a couple of different things up his sleeve. First of all, Jack is the one who got the authorization and funding for this program. So he is knee deep in it.
This dude's like a smart villain. I love it. He's not a villain you can just punch into submission. It's a nice change of pace.
Jack even starts to try to do that after Ritter reveals that he's got a get out of jail free card. He has that written authorization from the president.
Oh, you have one of these, don't you? No?
I am so happy that this actor is going to be back for the next Mission Impossible because I want to see where he's been. And canon, this is the same guy.
So I got to say, though, I don't really understand why that permission slip is like a get out of jail free card, because all it does is throws the president under the bus, but this just means they would both get in trouble. And I know this movie is supposed to be like about Iran-Contra where nobody got in trouble, but I'm saying in the world of the movie where people are actually held accountable for their bad actions, all that would do was get them both in trouble as opposed to just Ritter.
Or Ritter has this in his back pocket and says, give me a pardon or else I show them this.
Yeah, it's like for the president to like get his butt out of the fire.
Yeah.
Okay.
But then we get the phone call and we find out that Greer passed.
Yeah, so at Greer's funeral, I was getting a little blue balls a little bit for continuity because they were like, he served his country, he had such a long career, he did so many interesting things, and I was waiting for like that time with the Red October or that time with the IRA.
Say that at a funeral. Remember, with the Red October, he was like, I was never here. You never did that.
Yeah, but he's dead now, so whatever.
Well, that's still classified.
Yeah, and that guy who's the president now in the movie wouldn't have been president when Red October happened.
Guys, just let me have my continuity, all right?
So he may not even know.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. In the book, they're actually in election season for the second term, which it has a huge implication of how the book ends versus how the movie ends.
Interesting. Also, was this supposed to be Arlington Cemetery? I couldn't quite tell.
Yes, I think, yeah.
Okay.
Greer would have been buried there.
I would assume that he would, so that's why my assumption was. But I couldn't quite place if it was. Like, they didn't show any of the iconography that you always associate with Arlington, so that's why I didn't think it was necessarily was filmed there. Although they did a pretty good job of filming everywhere else in DC.
That's something that I'd have to look up. I don't know if they're even allowed to.
I wouldn't be surprised if they're not.
So his funeral's going on. It's all intercut with Cortez going after the special ops team.
Yeah, their communications is jammed. They can't talk to
Clark can't get in touch with them. They keep calling out to him saying that we need air support, but there's nothing coming because he can't hear any of them.
Well, actually, their communications weren't jammed.
They were just cut off.
Yeah, so the soldiers get attacked and killed except for two of them that are taken captive, but Ding Chavez, because he's the man, escapes. And he thinks about starting shooting, but then he changes his mind, which I thought was kind of cool. And then meanwhile, back in America, the car phone's back. Remember the car phone?
Oh, yeah. All right. Jack gets a call from the DEA, his contact in the DEA, who's in Colombia. She intercepted the radio call from the team to Clark. And Jack's like, I want copies. I want a copy. I want 10 copies. Send them to me.
Well, it wasn't just that. I think that's also where she was like, we also have this other bit you might want to listen to. And it was the exchange between Cortez and Cutter.
Oh, that's right. That's what he wants copies of. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was the big evidence that breaks the whole case wide open.
Ritter are calling Clark. They say that they shut down the satellite link. He tells them that Ryan found out everything and that because of that, they had to shut it down. Clark is pissed at Ryan and says, where is he? I'll get on a plane and kill him. I was impressed that they pitted the two of them against each other.
Yeah, but Clark instantly buys it, which I think is interesting for such a generally suspicious, world-weary guy.
I don't think he instantly bought it. I think he was still ticked off because, I mean, he obviously cared very much about his team.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's probably, really upset that, this, and this. But he's also not naive.
Right.
So he knows that
Unlike
just
Ryan.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. He's been doing this for, probably 15, 16 years or so by now. So, I mean, he doesn't necessarily trust Cutter because he already knows he's running a non-legal operation. So he's already lied to other people.
Mm-hmm.
Think of a criminal myself.
Yeah. Yeah. So he's probably not going to, once he calms down up for a second, he's probably not going to do anything unless he, verifies that what he's being told is true.
Well, I guess he doesn't do anything that he can't take back.
Right.
He finds out the truth.
Yeah, so Ryan arrives in Bogota, and Clark finds him at the airport, like, gets a gun and puts it, like, underneath a coat and gets, Ryan at gunpoint, cuts him into a van, has him drive off. We go to Ritter at home, in bed with his wife, gets a call at, like, probably 3 a.m. or something. And it's Clark, and Clark says that Ryan's dead, and tells him to turn the op back on, and...
Because you always talk about your assassinations and secret operations on an open line in your guy's house.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Well, I mean, really, it's just a ploy for him to figure out, all right, is he telling the truth? Is this really what's going on? Or is Ryan telling me something real?
And if he's looking at, time of being the essence and trying to get the communications back on to try to get in touch with his guys, he knows where Ritter is going to be.
Yeah.
I mean, Ritter probably does have a secure phone in his residence.
Mm-hmm.
Clark's not going to be able to call it.
Yeah.
No, I know. I just think it's funny that he could have been like, "It's done. Are we back on?" I mean, it is a spy movie. I do think it's interesting that he lies to Ritter.
Well, because like we said, he's not, he's not trustworthy. He is world weary and suspicious. So he figured this is his way of finding out what the truth, if there is such a thing, is.
Which is what makes that whole moment way early on in the movie when Ryan first meets Clark.
Yeah.
And, they established that relationship through Greer. Clark's probably also thinking, well, if, Greer trusts this guy and I trust Greer, then maybe there's something more to this guy than
something there.
Than what's going on, what I'm being told.
Ryan tells him that he's there to help get those guys out. What do you need? I need a helicopter. So they go into this bar because apparently the pilot that Clark knows is there.
Yeah, they spend a lot of time with them getting the chopper and the pilot. Which
I like the moment with the chopper, though. So, he goes, they find a chopper for him. He's like, how much is it to rent? Oh, we don't rent it anymore. It's for sale, $2 million. Oh, well, my pilot, when you take a test flight. Sure, you just need to leave a deposit. $2 million.
Yeah.
Oh, do you accept the company check? And he gives him the business. He's carrying around CIA business cards.
Finally, him being deputy director of the CIA is actually paying off.
Yeah.
Because before this, he's like Commander Shepard, where he has a really high title, but he still has to do all his grunt work himself.
Yeah, but I'm just like, the idea of someone carrying around CIA business cards is hilarious to me.
I can see him having the business cards. Like, he is a deputy director. I mean, for one, all things being equal, you're not typically going to have the deputy director of intelligence tooling around on his own in Colombia.
True. Yeah, I have no problem with him actually having the business cards, but the fact that he's like flashing it around is hilarious to me.
But I think Zach made a point to where he is like, I'm the deputy director of intelligence now. I can do this stuff. Might as well do it.
Clark is like, get off. Doesn't he say get off my plane?
He says, get off my chopper.
Oh, get off my chopper, rather. And he's like, my chopper. And he shows him the receipt for that he bought it with.
And Clark just like looks at him like, you actually bought this thing.
And so they go to fly to find the men. They find the last communication point and where would be the last, like a good extraction point from there. They find a body of one of the soldiers.
I liked the contrast here between Commando Clark with bumbling Jack.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got like the backpack, he's got the gun, he's got the boots, whereas Jack is kind of running around. He's like sweating. You can just see some of his dad bod.
He's got the khakis.
Harrison Ford does not have a dad bod. Excuse me.
The prosthetic dad bod. How's that?
Maybe.
CGI dad bod.
But eventually they find Chavez, and Chavez is mad. He's ready to kill Clark because he thinks Clark sold them out.
Yeah. But like Jack pulls him off and is like, it's not his fault. It's like, oh, really, whose fault is it? It's my fault.
Yeah, but why is it his fault? I don't understand.
Because he exposed the everything, and if not for that, they would have not shut it down.
No, I don't think that's it. Because they were already shutting it down before, we have the whole race to the printer scene.
Right.
What I
right,
think,
that's right.
what I think, and this goes more into Jack Ryan's character,
He feels it's his responsibility.
Right, that he should have known somehow. I mean, even though he was purposely kept in the dark by arguably three very powerful people, the president, the deputy director of operations, and the national security advisor. I mean, if they're keeping him in the dark, there's really, I mean, he eventually does find out on his own, but he had to really work at it. So I think he sees it as a failure on his part that he didn't do more sooner. That he could have saved everybody, because that's what
I totally get that,
because that's the way he is. He's always got to save the day.
I know. I just think it's funny that when confronted with a furious special commando guy, I would not be like, blame me. I'd be like, blame someone who isn't in this room.
But I think also because
he's such a good guy, he's gonna take that responsibility.
Boy Scout.
Yeah. For the same reason why Chavez didn't start sniping the people when his comrades were taken. Ultimately Chavez and Clark, but more so to the effect of he's not going to shoot him. Chavez is a professional soldier, so he's just not going to randomly kill Ryan in cold blood like that.
True.
Yeah, but he could have hit him a couple times. Okay.
Oh yeah, he could probably beat the hell out of him, but Clark's also not going to let him do that either.
What happens is they find the area where they load all the prisoners. Like, well, we don't know where they go from here. Jack says, Escobedo knows. I was like, what are you going to do? Knock on his door? That's exactly what he does.
Yeah.
And again, flashing that CIA business card, which I find that hilarious. Just the balls on him to do that is amazing.
Which the next time they have an event at the Spy Museum, that's what we should do for ID cards. Just make up CIA business cards and hand them out to everybody.
Dude, is that legal? That sounds scary.
Well, we'll alter it somewhat. We'll misspell intelligence or something.
Okay. Yeah, so Jack fingers Cortez at this part, and it's very tense, and then the action begins.
Yeah, he's trying to get info on him, and tells him that Cortez has sold him out, and plays the recording of the, and as this is all going on, Clark and Chavez are watching as Jack is doing this. I watched as he's got brought to the Lindo Coffee
the Lindo Coffee Factory or whatever.
Factory. Yeah, I could not remember the name for factory.
This is right out of freaking License to Kill. Absolutely.
Yes, all right, fair enough. It was very much inspired. License to Kill is very much inspired by Miami Vice and that sort of stuff, and also just the cartels. So I see why you would think it's
cartel
similar.
themed.
Yeah. Cartel genre.
So Cortez was at the coffee facility, and I like how Jack has this cigar that he's just smoking as Cortez comes in. And Jack wants the safe return of his associates and offers Cortez to Escobedo in return. And he plays the tape, and as this is going on, Escobedo's swinging this baseball bat around and is like, I guess what am I supposed to do here? I guess I'm supposed to hit you with this bat. And right before he does, one of Cortez's men shoots Escobedo in the back.
Which
as well as Escobedo's other guards too. Which
the whole swinging of the bat thing was very Al Capone and Untouchables like.
That's what it was. I was like, what is this reminding me of? I was like, has there been something with Pablo Escobar swinging around a bat? I can't think of anything, but yes, that reminded me very much of. That's what it was. That scene in the Untouchables where he's giving the speech about all his associates and just starts beating killing one of his associates. Yeah,
because he was talking about teamwork and somebody was a team player.
The guy who shot Escobedo in the back is about to shoot Jack. A sniper bullet takes him out, presumably from Chavez.
Yeah. Fight. Action,
and Jack
action.
And Cortez have a fight, but Cortez gets away.
Yeah.
And then I like this. Cortez tells all the men to seal the facility and that the American killed Escobedo.
He's pretty smart.
And so now Cortez has a gun. Also, before we kind of skipped over, Clark is trying to get the pilot on the radio and is like, respond. He does not respond.
Yeah, because he's alcoholic, drunk, passed out in the cockpit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's why they introduced him earlier to explain why he's taking so long to show up.
Yep. And so Clark goes in,
somehow he gets in.
Well, I like the scene where Jack sees someone coming into the door and slams the door, and it's Clark on the other side. He pushes back, and they do this a couple of times. They realize, oh, you're on the other side of this, and then they say, "Where's Cortez?" How's my Harrison Ford impersonation?
Very good.
This also reminds me of how in Fast and Furious when our two heroes fight, but neither of them are allowed to win. So it's like running and gunning, and they find the prisoners. And I was expecting when they find the prisoners that the prisoners would be like fine. So then it's like
Really?
a big shootout where it's like four guys on one side. No. Okay.
Also, well, at this point, like Cortez realizes that they're going after prisoners, but doesn't do anything to try to guard the prisoners anymore.
I think at this point he's just worried about his own survival.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. And yeah, I fully expected the prisoners to be in worse shape than what they were.
Okay, so I'm in the middle where it's like, okay, that's I expected them to be just sort of how they were.
Yeah, because they're gonna be beaten, tortured. Find out. Have them admit to being Americans for one, probably. Yeah. Are there other Americans? So on and so forth.
Jack and Clark are getting the two soldiers out, and like Cortez almost sees them, and Jack decides he's going to cause distraction so that they can get the prisoners out. And he like grabs this giant piece of wood and jams it into the machinery. It was a very Indiana Jones move to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, in this part, Ford runs kind of slowly. It reminds me of Captain Marvel when you had 80-year-old Samuel L. Jackson with a 40-year-old Samuel L. Jackson face, which is fine until he has to like move, and then he like moves like an 80-year-old.
How old was Harrison Ford here?
I mean,
50s probably. 40s?
He was born in 42, so yeah, he was 51.
Yeah.
He actually looked pretty good for 51 then. I thought he was in his 40s. So there's a quiet part where he's like hiding.
Oh yeah.
And he plays the tape recorder as a distraction, and then fights Cortez again.
Cortez gets buried under a bunch of logs.
Which I like that it was just like a coincidence. That it wasn't just Ryan winning by being tougher and stronger, because we determined he's not tough and strong.
And there's no convenient anchor around somewhere.
Yeah. For him to fall on.
The anchor that Sean Miller gets impaled on.
Oh, yeah. And then blown up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I forgot he also gets blown up. Wow. But yeah, so I was at least a little concerned that it was just going to be, the end of Cortez. I was like, oh, that's it? He just gets buried under a bunch of logs?
That was very Cersei Lannister-like death.
Yeah.
Very anticlimactic.
Mm.
Yeah, so I was worried that was going to be, but we find, of course, that's not the end of him. But Jack, so he's like, he hears the chopper going overhead, and he like gets up to the roof, like he breaks through the tin roof, like by like hanging on by his arms and like swinging and like kicking it open. I was like, wow, that's impressive.
So I've done stuff like that on like ropes courses.
Yeah.
And like
it's hard
and stuff. It's pretty hard. Yeah, I guess I take back what I said about the dad bod.
See, right? Come on.
Yeah, so he gets to the roof. There's all the shooting. He somehow doesn't die because it's an action movie.
Everyone besides Jack gets on the chopper. Clark says to the pilot, "No, we wait for Ryan." He's like, "Okay, we're going."
I guess the pilot's like an idiot or whatever.
Yeah.
Or maybe you couldn't hear him.
Yeah.
But then this is the most ridiculous part of the movie.
Is
right
it?
Here.
Is it
yes.
though?
Yes, of course it is. He runs across the roof, doesn't get shot, whatever, that's normal action movie stuff. But then he like grabs onto the strut of the helicopter and like dangles off of it as it goes flying across the city. Yeah. A 51-year-old man.
But you're not selling all of it. It's not like he's just hanging there and everything's okay. He is slipping, and also as he's slipping, I think that's fine. Like, okay, that he's slipping. Like, it's not just showing that he's very strongly and confidently getting up there, like Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible.
Well, not everybody's Tom Cruise.
I'm saying that he's not, obviously. So that's why that's a good comparison. Is like he's having trouble. He's falling off, and like Clark is trying to. I thought it was a good moment where he's like trying to get him, and like it's showing that Clark actually cares about him because he's saying to go back for him.
Yes, the sexual tension was strong. I know.
And also, at this point, Cortez bursts through the roof from the hole that Jack made, and he like has a gun and is like trying to shoot at them. And Clark has Domingo Chavez take care of him and just take him out.
Hell yeah!
So there we go. At least that's a better death than just falling under some logs.
Yeah, but it also gives Chavez some semblance of vengeance.
True.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But
okay.
So Clark pulls him up, and like they have this real good like bromance moment.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we see Ritter leaving the Oval Office, which I like. I'm like, what's going on? What happened there?
This is where in the movie I don't know what everybody knows at this point, because as far as Cutter and Ritter know, Jack is dead.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we never really get that reveal.
And then they walk out of the Oval Office, and then Jack's sitting there, and they're like, something is rotten in Denmark, kind of thing.
I guess I must have missed that. So that's a good point.
Well, they didn't. They never call it out in the movie, but I assume in the book they say something about it.
We'll get to that shortly.
Okay.
Yeah, so we have Jack meeting with the president. He's like, things have gone on that he was unaware of, and we have to find out who's responsible, but very delicately, because we don't want to have another scandal on our hands. Whereas Jack, he understands. Oh, I know you're upset, but then Jack is like, no, you won't dishonor the dead by playing this game.
Well, he conflates what's good for him and what's good for the country, which we've seen politicians do in other movies.
And Jack says that he's going to report all of this to the Senate Oversight Committee. It's not, I don't want to do this, but I have to. And the president's like, no, you won't. You're in the game now. You're going to keep this in your back pocket when you need something from me. It's like, if you do go down this road, you're going to take the blame. Yeah, sure, Cutter and Ritter will take some of the blame too. But you know who's going to take a big blame? Greer. And you're going to spoil his legacy like that.
Ooh, cut deep. Someone he actually cares about.
Yeah. And we go to Jack going in front of the Senate Oversight Committee. There's press, there's an audience. He gets sworn in to give testimony as credits roll.
It's like the ending of Fair Game.
Exactly, that's what I was thinking about. Yeah, so that's the end of the movie. So shall we go into our spy fact versus spy fiction? So I've got a few things that are in terms of real life, and then we also go into the book versus movie comparisons here. So first of all, the Kali cartel. I assume there was not actually a real cartel, just because they specify that it's not part of the Medellin cartel. But it turns out Kali cartel is a real cartel, and then they did actually break away from the Medellin and Pablo Escobar in the 1980s. So it's a real cartel. And of course, we said that in the beginning that Pablo Escobar is obviously the inspiration for Ernesto Escobedo. Escobar was also killed, but actually he was killed by the Colombian National Police. But yes, so let's just get into it. Lance, what was different?
Lance, take it away.
Everything. For starters, the whole thing about the dead family on the boat being, lifelong friends with the president. Yeah, that's not a thing in the book. He's just a random rich guy.
But that takes away the main motivation. Like, what was the motivation for the president to get involved?
Well, and I'll get into that. But the whole thing does come down. There's actually a really intense scene in the book where the Coast Guard cutter comes up to it, which I do want to point out one mistake in the movie about that scene. The captain of the cutter, the female captain, when you look at her hat, she has enlisted insignia on her hat, which it's actually not necessarily uncommon to have enlisted be in charge of a cutter.
Yeah,
not necessarily a cutter, but a smaller Coast Guard vessel.
And we were saying cutter, we're talking about the boat here and not about the character.
Right.
Not the contrary.
Not exactly. But then one of the team lead that goes over onto the civilian boat, she refers to him as senior chief, which would be an E8, which would makes him very senior enlisted. There's only you can go up to E9. So she is definitely an officer, and he's referring to her as captain, which would be the correct position, and ma'am. So yeah, she's at least probably an O2 or an O3.
Interesting. Okay.
So that was wrong, which as someone in the military, that bugged me.
Yeah, you military guys love correcting the uniforms and the patches and the this and the that and the other thing. Seems like easy mistakes to make.
They are. But this was also back when this was filmed, to where you did have some coordination between Hollywood and the services. And
I mean, to a degree, that still goes on as well.
Well, actually, it's gotten even more so because the services wanted to, if we're being portrayed in movies, we want to be portrayed correctly.
Which is why every Transformers movie has a degree of military, because that's basically free promotion for them.
Exactly. It's almost like a recruiting tool. So when they get to the boat, actually, if I remember correctly, because it's been a while since I've read the book, the family, they didn't dump the bodies overboard yet.
Oh, so the bodies are still there.
Yeah. So, I mean, and it was a bloody slaughter, which really got under the skin of the Coast Guardsmen. To where, I mean, they even have like this mock trial on board. They're trying to use like sea laws that they can try these guys for murder and execute them.
Interesting. All right.
They don't execute them, but they do have like the mock trial, the mock sea trial, and they find out all the information of that the guy was running. It was a thief for the cartels or whatever, and that's when they find out about the money.
Yeah, that was something I was wondering about. If I could just jump in,
Sure.
I was thinking about it because I was like, if you're going to have the president engage in U.S. military operations against a cartel, I feel like we should give him a more morally righteous reason. So, like, have his daughter die of a drug overdose or something like that. He's like, because when he says these drug cartels are clear and present danger to the United States, it's like, what? That's not true.
So this was written in the midst of like the Ronald Reagan era of like the say no to drugs, Nancy Reagan, all of that stuff. And,
yeah, because the book itself was written in '89.
Yeah.
But also, just to finish my thought here, the fact that it's an ally of his who gets killed betrays that, oh yeah, this president is actually more self-interested and he's actually not such a good guy, as we learn later in the movie. By the way, if you guys like gun wanks, U.S. military or military type people versus cartels, I'd recommend both Sicario movies.
I have those on my to watch list on Netflix.
Okay.
But to kind of get to where all this starts is they do have the whole money thing to where we want to take the huge sum of money that has been discovered in all these offshore accounts, whatever. So they do have the scene in the book where Jacobs goes down to try to do the whole negotiation. You have the ambush. Right. It's that ambush is what leads the president to have Operation Reciprocity.
So that's all before. It's not after.
Yeah, Reciprocity. Yeah, that Reciprocity doesn't take place until after the ambush in which Jacobs is killed, and not Dan Murray. In the movie, they made it seem like there was just one team of special operations soldiers that was down there. I think there were actually 4 groups running around the country, with Clark doing the whole thing. 3 out of the 4 at the end do get out okay. But the team with Chavez and the captain, they get all kinds of hosed.
That makes more sense that there's more people doing it. 12 guys against a whole country of cartels.
Right. It's actually Robbie Jackson.
Oh, hey.
Yeah, Ryan's friend, who's not in the movie.
Yeah.
Sadly, because that would have been a great cameo for Samuel L. Jackson. He knows there's a whole bunch of different naval activity that's going on. They're using F-18s, F-14s, and F-15s flying out of Eglin to shoot down Cessnas that are smuggling drugs into the country.
Oh, you mean like?
Oh no, poor Barry Seal.
Yeah, Barry Seal.
What a way to go!
Exactly. And so he brings that to Jack, and that's when Jack starts wondering what's going on. And he does talk with Greer a little bit. He does start doing the digging at that point. And it's not that he has somebody hack into Ritter's account. He actually breaks into a safe. And sees the documents and so on and so forth. Neither Cortez nor Escobedo are killed.
Oh, okay.
They do turn Escobedo over to the other cartel chieftains and explain, this is what he was doing. And it's heavily alluded to that they get their own baseball bats and go out Capone on them. They take Cortez and turn him back over to the Cubans, who label him as a traitor. So they probably do their own version of Castro being a huge baseball player himself. Probably had his own fun with baseball bats.
A fitting end for his kind.
Like Cutter, he's like, well, that's great. However, you're not going to arrest me. You're not going to do anything. And Clark's like, well, why is that? And then Cutter proceeds to step in front of a Metro bus and gets hit and killed.
Wow, that's so dramatic. I can't believe that.
Was it Cutter or Ritter?
No, it was Cutter. It was
okay. Yeah. The National Security Advisor. Wow.
So I mean, there was this whole.
Sounds like there was quite a bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, even so much to where Tom Clancy very much was displeased, and this is kind of where he started having the falling out with Hollywood.
Interesting.
Because he was like, yeah, they made a movie, but it's not the book I wrote.
Well, wait till you get to future movies, because
I mean,
Yeah.
you told us a lot, but there didn't strike me as such huge differences as to get Tom Clancy all hot and bothered.
yeah, like I could imagine him getting pissed off at, say, the Summer of All Fears, where I know it's a completely different story, basically. So, but this, I mean, at least the essence of it is still here.
I still liked the movie, and I liked the book, but I have to distance myself because, to me at least, anyway. And I imagine if I'm the author, I can see where he'd be ticked off because they killed characters they weren't supposed to.
Yeah.
They didn't kill characters they were supposed to. And the whole rescue scene and everything else. And there's a lot of other different subplot bits and pieces too, because it's a Clancy book, so there always has to be.
Of course, there is. There have to be like 100 different plots going on at once.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
which Zach absolutely totally loves. And he breaks down a whole bunch of different things in minute detail. Things like there's like 5, like there's 5 chapters probably about the makeup of the missile that they used.
Of course.
I mean, the thing about the descriptions, you could just skip the descriptions. All the subplots, that's a different story.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else, Lance, for Spy Fact versus Fiction or book versus movie?
No, I think we're good there.
All right, thanks.
So next is our favorite quotes. Lance, as our guest, do you want to go first?
Actually, Zach, I want you to go first because I've like stolen 4 or 5 of your quotes already.
Yeah, I was thinking that, but I was too polite to say it.
No, you said it.
You flat out said it.
No, that's true.
So,
Okay.
So I think you should go first.
All right. So
Yeah,
as I
go
said, I liked they want what every first term administration wants a second term.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the exchange about the Mexican food. And congratulations, James, you've got your own little war. So those were all great. But I will say for my favorite quotes, I liked the military wanking stuff because this is a military wank movie. So I liked chicken is in the pot. Now cook it. And start the music.
Those are all pretty bad.
America.
I mean, I can see those actually being said, but that doesn't mean that they're not bad.
All right, lads, why don't you go through yours?
I liked all the ones that Zach had, the ones that we've
Mhm.
already talked about earlier. So I'm going to go with not necessarily a quote, but the whole exchange between Jack and Kathy when they were in their car coming back from Andrews, when all the bodies were brought back.
Mm-hmm.
Kathy makes the comment to where that seems really coincidental that his secretary was killed the same day that Jacobs was.
Mm-hmm.
And Jack's like, well, actually, no, it wasn't his secretary. It was his deputy, so and so, and this, and this, thinking wrong type of secretary. And they have that moment where they're looking at each other like, what the hell are you talking about? No, what are you talking about?
Nice.
I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah. It's cheesy, but I liked when the president, name dropped the movie. Like, I think it was like 10 minutes in. These drug cartels represent a clear and present danger to the national security of the United States.
But do they though?
No, it was a good line. Like,
Yeah.
I've seen I think it was they did this for James Bond movies. Where like, all right, if James Bond movies ended once they've said the title of the movie, and it's how long into each of them they get basically. I also liked Greer saying, want to know about politics in Washington? 4 words. Watch your back, Jack.
You even cut it down to 3 words. So you got his name.
I liked when Ritter's talking about Ryan. He's like, Ryan, he's a goddamn Boy Scout. Believes in loyalty, cleanliness, and not tying.
Yeah. Those Boy Scouts.
Yeah. And lastly, just the balls on Jack when he goes up to Escobedo's place and says, good morning. I'd like to see Ernesto Escobedo. I don't have an appointment.
Yeah.
All right. So that's all our quotes.
Well, actually, if I could get one
go for it. Yeah.
The one scene I thought was also like really cute. Jack had given his first briefing by himself to the president, and he comes back and he's telling Greer all about it, and he's kind of looking dejected that maybe he said something he shouldn't have said something. And Greer looks at him and is like, "No, you are trying to impress the president of the United States." and Jack's like, "Yeah, you got me."
That's true.
But actually, I take that back. This was going to be my most favorite because I can personally relate to it. The one part where Jack and the family, they're in the kitchen getting ready for breakfast or whatever. And if you notice, they had a throwback to the last
the pancakes,
movie.
Right?
The pancakes. But in Clear and Present Danger, Jack's like looking at Sally. He's like, do you want toast or toast? And then Sally says that same line to Jack Jr. when he wants pancakes. He's like, well, you can have toast or toast. But that wasn't the point. when they're standing there and they're watching the CNN clip of the president walking towards Marine One or whatever, and the reporters are shouting the questions, and he starts like, "No, we weren't just lifelong or best friends. We were lifelong friends." And Jack's like, "I told him to say that. That's my line." And he starts freaking out, whatever. I'm like, yeah, I can appreciate that.
Okay, so now it's time for ratings on a scale of 1 to 10 martinis, 1 being the Avengers with Uma Thurman 1997, and 10 being even better than the first episode of The Prisoner. How would we rate Clear and Present Danger?
All right, Lance is our guest. Let's have you go first.
We keep making him do the stuff first. It's kind of funny.
That's okay. I don't mind. Let's see. I mean, I really enjoy the acting. Obviously the actor that plays Ritter does play the quintessential douche character very well. The bad guy, particularly Cortez. I mean, we've said it numerous times throughout the podcast how smart he was, how savvy. He wasn't just like he was like almost the opposite of Escobedo, where Escobedo was very fly by the seat of his pants. Cortez was calm, cool, calculated. Really liked that. There were some of the military things that kind of irked me, like we talked about. But overall, I would probably give it a solid 8 martinis.
Right. Yeah, that's what I would expect from our resident Clancy fanboy.
But that's also despite the fact, like I said, it was completely different from the movie. So I'm disassociating the book from the movie.
Okay. I understand. Do you want me to go next?
Sure.
Okay, so keeping in mind, I gave Patriot Games a 7.5, and I don't think this is quite as good as that. So things that I liked was that I liked that the administration of the U.S. was the bad guy, which is not what I was expecting from a big old flag waver like Tom Clancy. So that was interesting. I didn't really love that the plot didn't seem to have a clear direction. Like in Patriot Games, find Sean Miller and kill him. Whereas this is like a twist and then a turn. And then it's like, okay, what's going to happen now? And then now we have the action and so on. And it was just like really long, like excessively long. Like it didn't need to be that long. So I am going to give it a 6.5 out of 10.
I'm going to side with Lance and also give it an 8 out of 10 martinis. I like this more than Patriot Games. I really enjoyed Ritter's character, and I think that's probably because I have a predisposition to liking that actor since he was in the first Mission Impossible, and he plays, again, a very similar role here. I like the twists and turns, and I like that I couldn't always predict where it was going, and it kept me interested. Even though it was a long movie, it didn't feel like a long movie to me. Felt like I was very much captured by it, and I liked the political wheeling and dealing, and I also just loved seeing the technology of the era of the floppy disks and the yes or no delete keys. So I really enjoyed it, and it took me on a ride.
So anything else you guys want to talk about? Lance still does his care for elderly cats, I assume.
Oh, of course.
So contact us if you're interested in that.
Thank you, as always, for listening, but especially now on our 50th episode. And thank you to Lance for being our guest star on this 50th episode.
Thank you guys so much for having me back. And the fact that it was your 50th makes it extra special. And I hope maybe to come back on your 100th episode.
Ooh, now we'll
probably have you back even sooner than that.
I look forward to it.
Awesome. And thank you for joining us as always, especially on our 50th episodes. And thank you all for listening for 50 episodes and hopefully for many, many more.
Mm-hmm.
And you can find us as always on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook under the Spy-Fi Guys. And until next time, I'm Christian.
And I'm Zach.
And we are the Spy-Fi Guys signing off.
Legalize it.
Thank you for listening to the Spy-Fi Guys. If you enjoyed our podcast, please be sure to give us a 5-star rating on iTunes. The theme song from this podcast is Mistake the Getaway by Kevin MacLeod from Incompetech.com. Licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0. Films, books, and television shows reviewed by our podcast are the intellectual property of their respective copyright holders, and no infringement is intended.
This is a personal podcast. Any views, statements, or opinions expressed in this podcast are personal and belong solely to the participants. They do not represent those of people, institutions, or organizations that the participants may or may not be associated with in a professional or personal capacity unless explicitly stated. Any views or opinions are not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, club, organization, company, or individual.
You can find our podcast on social media at The Spy-Fi Guys on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.